Hello and welcome to Fantastic Fights, the podcast about a middle-aged man playing adventure game books out loud on the internet. That middle-aged man is me, Hieronymus J. Doom, and this episode sees the return of one of the original creators of fighting fantasy, Ian Livingstone, as we take a look at Blood of the Zombies from 2012, which according to my memory was about 2 years ago, despite the calendar insisting that more than a decade has elapsed. Interior art is by Kevin Crossley, a former video game designer turned illustrator, and he gets bonus points from me for having worked on 2000 AD, aka the galaxy's greatest comic. I'll be very interested to see what he brings to the table. Cover art is by Greg Staples and shows a horde of zombies smashing down a door. It is a cracking bit of work. I really like how dynamic it is, with forced perspective and a real sense of malevolent action, but also a pulpy feel that seems entirely appropriate to the subject matter. The title is rendered in a slightly jumbled and bloodstained font as well, which adds to the dynamism of the cover. It definitely makes me want to play the book, so a sterling job there by Greg Staples. Before we get into the meat of the episode, there's a little bit of housekeeping. Hopefully, by the time you are listening to this, my new gamebook might be available for my lovely patrons over on patreon.com/HJDoom as a reward for their continued financial support. It was written as a bit of silly nonsense to get used to using twine, but then ballooned until it was 41,000 words and more than 550 sections. It's called Mr. Blobby and the Propaganda of the Deed, and it's an incoherent and frequently libelous adventure starring Britain's favourite 7-foot-tall force of chaos. It gets pretty dark at times because I wasn't very well when I wrote it, and it's also probably a bit confusing if you didn't grow up in England in the 90s, but hopefully there's some stuff in there that people will enjoy. To get a copy, all you need to do is support me on Patreon for as little as £1 or local equivalent, and you'll be able to download the Twine game and also all the other bits of nonsense that the Doom household has produced over the years. Thank you very much to my patrons for their patience, and I'm sorry not to have got the original gamebook I was working on last year out. I will return to it at some point because there was a nice idea in there. Now let's get on with the show and take a look at the rules of Blood of the Zombies. On this occasion, skill, stamina and luck are very much not present and correct, nor are provisions in the offing, which is sad for me and all fans of doggedly sticking to a running gag for far too long. Instead, we have an entirely new system, which involves stamina and damage. Your stamina is generated with 2d6 plus 20, and can be restored with medkits. Should it fall to 0, then it's game over man, game over, much as usual. Damage is determined entirely by weapon type, so a shotgun might have a damage score of 1d6 plus 5. Each round you roll the damage dice for your weapon, and you can kill a total number of zombies equal to the score. So if you rolled a 6, you would add the 5 to that, and it would enable you to kill 11 zombies that round. Any zombies left over each deal 1 point of damage to your stamina, so if you've killed 11 out of 20 zombies in a horde, the 9 that remain will deal 9 points of damage before you get to roll again to try and finish them off. It's a simple enough system, and I do like how it captures the idea that one zombie is no threat at all, but many zombies can overwhelm even the most skilled fighter. And this is a great example of designing the system to fit the gamebook you're writing. For a standalone gamebook, this is absolutely the approach I would always recommend taking. Keep it simple and elegant, and think hard about what the book actually needs to model with explicit rules. The constraints that this imposes can also be a source of creativity as well. I like that Livingstone has made the call that killing zombies is literally the only thing the combat system needs to model, and has then built the combat around trying to convey that specific experience. It's worth saying that if you're planning on writing a series of gamebooks, this may not be the correct approach. We saw from Way of the Tiger that a system that does a great job of modelling being a super cool ninja ran into a few issues when the series wanted to expand into other areas. Suddenly there just wasn't much for the core mechanics to actually do at times, and that is where a more generic approach can work well, especially if the core systems are as adaptable as they are with fighting fantasy. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how this system works in practice. I also feel like lean mechanics work particularly well for horror games. Systems act as spoilers of a sort for what might be going to happen in the book, and I like very much that the only thing this system gives away is that you're going to be fighting zombies and you'll be doing it a whole bunch. That keeps things mysterious, and I do approve of that. I should say I've been a connoisseur of zombie movies at various points in my life. I was absolutely obsessed with zombie movies and video games as well, from my late teens until my early 30s. There was a point in my life where I genuinely felt that everything was better with zombies in it. And one of the great sorrows of my life was popular culture enabling me to find out that this was not in fact the case, as zombies were mechanically crammed into every possible franchise to the point where even I found it a bit much. I do still retain a degree of fondness for the cannibal undead, however, that even later seasons of The Walking Dead didn't manage to ruin. There is a lot you can do with zombies, so I'll be looking carefully at the semiotics of these cadaverous monsters. The rules also suggest that you should track the number of zombies you've killed, which is a very, very cool concept. I have generated my character, who I have decided to call Bep Splatter, because that sounds like a good name for a zombie killer. They have 29 stamina and are otherwise completely without any equipment whatsoever. With all that out of the way, let's play Blood of the Zombies. Background. Was it the cold iron shackles biting into your bleeding wrists that woke you? Or was it the terrible hunger in your belly? It doesn't matter. You are awake again for at least the 10th time tonight. If, in fact, it is night. It is not easy sleeping on a cold concrete floor at the best of times, but when your wrists are chained to a wall, it is virtually impossible. The gloomy cell in which you are imprisoned would be in total darkness were it not for the bare light bulb fixed to the ceiling above you, a small globe of pale, flickering light. Cockroaches scurry across the floor, but you don't even care. How long have you been held prisoner? Is it 5 or 6 days since you were thrown into the cell? It is impossible to tell. Time passes slowly. The only break from your solitude comes when you hear the grating sound of the bolt of the heavy steel door sliding back. That signals the entrance of the thick-set prison guard, who staggers into the cell limping from an old wound, and usually drunk. If you are lucky, he will be carrying a small bowl of foul-tasting stew that slops over the rim as he lurches along. If you are very lucky, he will also bring a chunk of stale bread and a mug of pale coffee made from dregs. He always places the food on the floor just out of your reach. His cruel, pock-marked face momentarily smiling as he enjoys the moment. He knows that if he does this, you will have to stretch to reach the bowl with your feet, making the shackles bite deeply into your bleeding wrists. He never speaks, but always kicks you hard in the ribs on his way out before slamming the door behind him and bolting it shut. He doesn't seem to care whether you live or die. Said before, I'll say it again, I like being thrown into the midst of the action. I think that's much more interesting than being told to go do this or that by some posho. Yeah, this is doing a really good job of setting the scene, as you would expect from a wordsmith like Ian Livingstone. It was hard to come to terms with the fact that you are a prisoner. As a second-year student of mythology at Bolingbroke College, it had been a great summer for you until now. You had spent 6 weeks of your holidays travelling through southern Europe trying to find evidence of legendary beasts. You started your quest by flying to Crete in search of Minotaur bones and the cave of the Cyclops, alas without success. From there you went by boat to Sicily, looking for evidence of werewolves, again without success. I don't know what kind of study programme Bolingbroke College offers for second-year students, but I did history first time round at university, and I definitely did not go and do field work around the Mediterranean in the second year of my degree. In fact, I didn't get to do any field work of any description whatsoever. I just went to a bunch of lectures, drank a lot of beer, and took some exams. Then you travelled by boat and train to Hungary, where you searched for ghosts and spectres in the shadows of misty graveyards and ruined castles. Much to your disappointment, none materialised. Hitching rides in open-top trucks, you ended up in Romania, in the part once known as Transylvania, where Count Vlad, the notorious vampire, reputedly drank the blood of his many victims. During a week spent asking the locals if they knew anything about the existence of vampires, you were met with only blank looks and shaking heads until you encountered a wrinkled old man who was willing to talk to you for the price of a new hat. He took you some 3 kilometres north of his village to a stone crypt, its entrance overgrown and virtually hidden by brambles and ivy. Whilst you cut back the weeds covering the steps down to the entrance, the old man disappeared without a word. The crypt door was locked, but the wood was rotten and you were able to kick it open. You shone a torch down the stone stairs and made your way slowly down to a damp chamber. Brushing back thick cobwebs, you saw an ancient dust-covered coffin set on a stone plinth at the back of the chamber. Don't know why, but I really like the word plinth. It's just a fun word to say. Plinth. With your heart pounding, you crept forward and lifted the lid. But the coffin contained a yellow-boned skeleton, not the sleeping vampire you had hoped to find. I do feel as though this character has an absolute death wish. You went back outside to find 3 burly thugs waiting for you. Armed with clubs, they set upon you as you tried to make a run for it. You struggled, but barehanded. It was a fight you were always going to lose. You were handcuffed and gagged before being bundled into the back of an old black car and driven for miles along a narrow road that carved its way through a dense forest to a range of hills. There you saw a foreboding-looking castle built of dark stone, nestled in a valley between 2 hills. The thugs grinned at each other, agreeing that you would be sold for a good price at the castle. You realised you were in grave danger. Not only had you been kidnapped, but you were about to be sold to a modern-day slave trader. Or perhaps worse. The car sped on up the hill until it reached the high-walled castle, where it screeched to a halt outside arched entrance doors. The thugs dragged you out of the car as the castle doors slowly creaked open to reveal a courtyard with some people milling about in it. You were blindfolded and handed over to an unseen person who led you into the courtyard. You heard groaning voices all around you. Dogs brushed against your legs, sniffing curiously. The strange, gurgling sounds erupting from their throats were like nothing you had heard before. You were jostled and pushed around until the crack of a whip and a commanding voice drove the unruly mob away. Much to your relief, you were taken indoors out of the burning sun and marched along what must have been a long corridor. Doors opened and slammed behind you, and it became noticeably cooler as you were led down several staircases. You were bundled along more passageways, stumbling against walls and banging your head against low door frames, until at last you were ordered to stop. Then you heard for the first time that now familiar grating sound of the steel bolt of your prison cell sliding open. You were kicked inside, and your handcuffs were removed, replaced by heavy shackles that were chained to the wall. Your blindfold was taken off, and you set eyes on your fat-faced prison guard for the first time. His pot belly strained against his filthy white t-shirt as he swung his army-booted foot into your ribs, as he would many times over the next few days. Sweating and panting from the effort of kicking you, he spoke to you, a few words in a deep, sneering voice. "Welcome to Graya Castle. My name is Otto. My master is Gingrich Yer. He's going to kill you." Ignoring your pleading questions, he left the cell roaring with laughter. It was the only time he ever spoke. Who is Gingrich Yer? Why does he want to kill you? You tug helplessly at the chains in anger, trying to get free. Eventually you give up and focus on the challenge of reaching the stew and bread before the cockroaches do. So, quite lengthy introduction, but nonetheless a evocative and intriguing one. Let's dive into the first section proper. There is a picture of a zombie's head on the facing page, which is really good, gruesome work, very detailed. strong, bold line work and very confident use of shading. It's really, really dark. The skin of the zombie's face is sort of wrinkled and sagging. You can see where part of the lower lip has come away. The eyes are sort of slightly different sizes and one of them stares blindly at you. The hair is lank and just sort of hanging across the forehead. It's really, really good. Really, really good. Great bit of zombie head artwork. You kick the cockroaches away and stretch to reach the bread with your feet. You drag it towards you, grabbing it with one hand. You break off small pieces, flicking them one at a time into your mouth. You make a stupid promise to yourself that one day you will do this as a party trick for your friends, if you live to tell the tale. You breathe in before stretching even further, this time to reach the bowl. The pain is unbearable as the shackles dig even deeper into your lacerated wrists, causing fresh blood to trickle down your arms. A few weeks ago, you could not have imagined putting yourself through so much agony just to eat a bowl of old stew, but now hunger drives you on. With one excruciating effort, you just manage to get both feet around the bowl, lifting it up carefully and passing it to your shackled hands. You tip the contents of the bowl into your mouth, gulping down the foul-smelling slop. It tastes so bad that for a moment you think you are going to be sick, but you are so hungry that you devour every morsel, gristle and all. But a few chunks of rotten meat are not enough to keep a mangy dog alive, let alone a starving prisoner. Something has to be done before you die of hunger. And if it is true that Gingrich Year is going to kill you, there is nothing to lose. You are going to have to try and escape from your prison cell. So we now have a choice. Do we want to call out to Otto, or would we rather talk to him when he next enters the cell? Oh, that is a tricky one. Great first decision. I think it might be worth waiting to see if we can somehow surprise him while he's not expecting it. He is going to come into the cell. He's going to give us the disgusting food, and then he's going to try and kick us in the ribs. And that, to me, feels like the opportunity to strike. People are vulnerable when they're not paying attention, and people are not paying attention when they're going through an established routine. So, for that reason, I am going to wait to talk to him when he next enters the cell and hope that I can somehow get the better of him then. Many hours pass before you hear the sound of the steel bolt sliding open again. Even though you have come to fear Otto's boot, the noise of the bolt also signals the arrival of food, disgusting though it is. As is often the case, Otto is drunk and looking forward to playing his usual game of placing your bowl of cold stew just out of reach before giving you a good kick. But this time you are going to fight back. To distract him, you tell him that he smells worse than a bag of dead frogs, which sends him into a blind rage. But you are prepared, committed in your mind to an all-or-nothing move. You will try and wrap your legs around him and pull him to the ground. As he pulls his leg bag to kick you, you seize the moment and strike. Holding onto the chains, you thrust your leg upwards to ensnare the fat jailer. Do you want to go for a risky headshot, or do you want to go for the body? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. I'm going to go for the head. Let's try and knock him out in a single kick. Hampered by your shackles and weak from hunger, you fail to get your legs high enough in the air. Otto easily fends off your attempt to snare him. "You'll pay for that," he says in a deep wheezing voice, kicking over your bowl of food in anger. Still enraged, he then kicks you viciously in the ribs several times. The pain is terrible, and you pass out. When you wake up, you cannot believe your eyes. You are in a large, windowless room lit by neon strips. You are chained to a smooth stone slab surrounded by screeching zombies. They become very animated when they see your eyes flick open. They shuffle closer to watch as a tall, thin, bespectacled man wearing a long white laboratory coat and rubber gloves injects your neck with zombie blood. The scientist sniggers as he tells you that you are about to become the latest conscript in Gingrich Year's army of zombies. Your adventure is over. Okay, well, that's a short and sharp experience of this book. Is this going to be one of those books that has one true path and will kill you the very second you deviate from it, I wonder? It's a good pulp horror way to go, though. Being injected with zombie blood. Excellent grisly detail. Obviously, I am going to invoke the sausagey finger bookmark rule. We will go back to the previous section and we will, instead of trying to kick him in the head, we will go for his body. Otto's reactions are slow, and your quick movement catches him off guard. You manage to wrap your legs around his midriff and haul him screaming to the ground. He tries to wriggle free, but you hold on to him, wrapping one of your chains around his neck. He gasps for breath and lashes out, catching you in the face with his elbow, but causing no real damage. You hang on to him and pull harder on the chain until he gives up the struggle and passes out. He slumps down on top of you, but you are just able to reach his belt. Your searching fingers find a key attached to a thin chain on his belt. The chain is just long enough for you to be able to put the key in the lock on your shackles. It fits, and the lock pops open much to your relief. You unlock the other shackle and snap it shut over the unconscious thug's wrist. A search of his pockets yields nothing more than a photo of a plump middle-aged woman which you throw on the floor. You rub your injured wrists and think about what to do next. You are barefoot and wearing the same t-shirt and cargo shorts you had on when you were kidnapped. A change of clothes would be welcome, but Otto's smell is worse than yours, so that will have to wait. You must find a way to escape. Otto starts to moan as he regains consciousness. Do you want to interrogate him, or would you like to leave the prison cell immediately? I think we need to try and find out what's going on, so I think a degree of interrogation. I hope, like all bullies, Otto will be something of a coward. I mean, that is a lie. Not all bullies are cowards. Some bullies are just psychopaths, and psychopaths have very poor ability to judge danger and often a very inflated sense of their own indestructibility that makes them quite physically dauntless in certain circumstances. But there are a lot of bullies who are also cowards as well. You give Otto the choice of him telling you about Gingrich Year or you giving him a very hard kick in the ribs. He quickly agrees to tell you all that he knows. He claims that he has never met Year. He was brought to the castle by two men who recruited him from his hometown, promising him work as a prison guard. They offered good pay, too good to turn down. That was 2 years ago. Now he feels like a prisoner himself, as he is not allowed to leave the prison quarters, other than to take charge of new prisoners. Only a handful of people ever talk to him. It was best for him not to ask questions about why people were being kidnapped and brought to the castle. He knows that Gingrich Year is a terrifying man. He learned from the old man who brought him his food supplies that Year is planning something unspeakably terrible, something that involves the prisoners. But he has no idea what that might be, as his role is simply to guard new prisoners until they are hauled off to another part of the castle. Otto falls silent, staring blankly at the floor. There is no time to lose. You have to escape. As you turn to leave, Otto begs you to release him, but instead you take his key off its chain and throw it into the corner of the room, telling him that you hope someone will bring him a nice bowl of stew. You bid him farewell and walk to the steel door. You peer out into the corridor, which is lit by a row of flickering strip lights in the ceiling. You sense evil all around and hope to find a weapon sooner rather than later. To the right, the corridor ends at a half-open doorway. To your left, the corridor continues as far as you can see. Do you want to walk to the open doorway, or do you want to walk left up the corridor? Now, traditionally, I would always go left when the option is presented to me, but this is a very deadly book. We've established that already, and I need to play with a modicum of good sense, I feel, having already died once. So I think investigating the open doorway makes much more sense, so that is what we will do. As you approach the doorway, the strong smell of cooked food fills your nostrils and awakens your hunger. Consumed by the thoughts of eating, you dash through the doorway into a small, poorly lit room, which appears to be Otto's living quarters. Grubby sheets cover a thin mattress on a wrought iron bed in one corner, and set against the far wall there is an old gas cooker that has a saucepan of potatoes simmering on the hob. Above the cooker there are some badly painted green shelves fixed to the wall. One shelf is crammed with cooking utensils and crockery, the other is laden with bags of vegetables, most of which are rotten. On the floor you see a bright red shoulder bag that has the word Hendrix printed on it in ornate lettering. You open the bag and find it contains nothing more than some dice, 3 pencils, a few coins, a book with half the pages missing, and a magazine about accordions. Oh dear, looks like we've got a pervert here. An accordion pervert. None of it is of interest to you, and you empty the contents onto the floor and keep the bag. In the middle of the room there is a rickety table with a white laminated top on which lie a paperback book and a plate of half-eaten meatloaf and potatoes. Do you want to finish off Otto's meal, or would you rather leave the room and head down the corridor? I've got, despite my starvation, the maximum stamina I can have, which is 29. So that it feels as though that is a bad choice, but I kind of want to try and get something out of this room. And maybe if I eat some food I'll be stronger and get some kind of bonus. Yeah, let's eat the meatloaf and potatoes. Even though plain meatloaf is not your favourite dish, right now it tastes like the best meal you have ever had in your life. They do say hunger is the best condiment. You help yourself to some potatoes and scoff them down until you can eat no more. You pat your full stomach contentedly and let out a loud belch. Add 2 stamina points. You are about to leave the room when you spot a small metal box tucked away under the stove. Do you want to open the box, or would you rather leave the room and head down the corridor? So we do get some more stamina. Do you know, I can't remember whether it said your stamina can go above the starting value. I'm going to have to check that before we inevitably look in the box. Yeah, it just says that your stamina will go up and down during the adventure. It doesn't say anything about that being your maximum stamina, so I guess I've now got 31 stamina. That's pretty cool. The box contains a small penknife, 1d6 minus 2, damage, $15 and some string. You take what you want, putting them in the bag, which you sling over your shoulder before leaving the room to head down the corridor. So we've got our first weapon. That's good. I mean, it's not good. It's a penknife. I wouldn't want to be trying to murder a horde of zombies with a small penknife. But, you know, better than nothing. And it'll be interesting to see when cash can be used. And string is always handy. Can't go wrong with some string. One thing that immediately occurs to me is that the way the weapons work is a really, really neat way of making your character potentially get stronger as the adventure progresses in a way that I think feels very natural and shouldn't, I don't think, create too much in the way of balance issues because of how the combat system works. So yeah, that's a surprisingly clever little feature. You can kind of level yourself up by getting new weapons. And that gives you that little dopamine hit that you get when your character improves, which is one of the core appeals in some ways of role-playing games. Certainly old school role-playing games have that. You are tempted to go back into your cell to give Otto a kick, but decide against petty revenge. You hurry down the corridor, the smooth concrete floor uncomfortably cold on your bare feet. After some distance you see some messages scrawled on the wall. One says, "They're coming to get us." Another says, "We're doomed." I wonder if the first one is a reference to Night of the Living Dead, where there's the classic line, "They're coming to get you, Barbara. They're coming to get you." And I wonder whether the second one is a reference to Dad's Army. There are other messages in languages you don't understand. You keep walking until you come to a black canvas pouch hanging from a hook on the wall. Do you want to open the pouch or keep on walking down the corridor? Is it going to have a spider in? Is this the pouch in which some lunatic in the castle keeps a spider? Or is it going to have some cash or something useful? I mean, I have to know. I always have to know. That is my curse. So let's go and have a look at the contents of the pouch. The pouch contains a small key with the number 9 stamped on it, a box of matches and a marker pen. Matches are always incredibly useful for arson, and I feel as though at some point we're going to want to do a bit of the old arson. Key with a number stamped on it. Never change in Livingstone, never change. The corridor ends at a door. You can hear the sounds of footsteps coming from the other side. There is no alternative but to open the door and face whatever it is. You breathe in deeply, kick the door open, and charge in to find yourself standing in a large storeroom. There is a man making notes on his clipboard, inspecting floor-to-ceiling shelves which are mostly empty. He's about 30 years of age, quite stocky with a shaved head, and wearing orange coveralls and black boots. He appears unconcerned by your sudden intrusion. "Ah, you must be the new prisoner. I wasn't expecting to see you here," he says, in a matter-of-fact kind of way. "Nobody has ever escaped from Otto's dungeon before. Do you want to give me one reason why I shouldn't raise the alarm?" Before you can speak, the man smiles and says, "The answer, my friend, is money. Show me the money. My name is Boris." "And I'm Gregor," says a deep voice to his left. You turn to see a much older man with a heavily lined face. He's wearing a brown bomber jacket and dirty old trainers. For some reason, the top of his head is wrapped in a grubby bandage. There is a picture of the 2 guards in the storeroom. Yeah, it's good. It's very good. There's a sort of comic book quality to it, which is quite nice. It wouldn't be out of place as a comic panel, but it's quite detailed. It does have that more illustratory quality to it as well. Yeah, it's really nice. The faces are expressive. Nice to see the background properly rendered. Yeah, it's a decent bit of work. I guess it's going to be try and bribe Boris with the $15 that I've got in my pocket. I guess that might be one of the things that money's useful for. So we can try and dash for the door or stay and talk to the men. You introduce yourself to the men, telling them how you came to be kidnapped. "Tell somebody who cares," Boris says, shrugging his shoulders indifferent to your hard luck story. "Listen, we can help you. We have things that you might need which we may be willing to sell to you, but only at a price. And that price is dollars. Take it or leave it." Do you have dollars and you want to buy something, or would you head to the door or fight the men? I don't think I want to fight 2 professional guards, so let's try and buy something. I think this is a really neat encounter because the idea of there being like a bunch of evil thugs who don't really care about anything at all. It's just a job as far as they're concerned, a job where they may have to kill people, but they've got no real attachment to whatever awful zombie-related nonsense Gingrich Year is doing. They're just here to earn some money, and yeah, they don't care what happens to him or what happens to you. "Good decision," Boris says with a smirk on his face. "You probably want to know what's going on inside the castle. I'll tell you for $10. My apologies to the people of whatever place I'm trying to do the accent for. I don't even know. I'm going for nebulously foreign, and it's not good, is it? It's just bad. It's just real bad. Do I want to pay Boris $10 for information? Yeah, why not? Why not? What can he tell us? If he tells us there's like 1,000 zombies behind the door, that would certainly be useful information to have. After you hand the money over to Boris, he tells you that Gingrich Yer is an insane megalomaniac hell-bent on world domination. Or I should say, my money is now down to $5. In Yer's twisted mind, he believes the only way he can do this is to lead an army of zombies to conquer mankind. I do love a genuinely insane plan for world domination. Think to yourself, I want to conquer the world. What's step 1? Zombies. Yer despises all humans, tolerating only his scientists and a few servants out of necessity. The scientists are helping him with his evil master plan. They have experimented for years in his subterranean laboratory, developing a mutated human gene. They found they were able to turn physically weak people into mindless zombies by injecting them with blood contaminated with this gene. That's cool, so it makes the starvation part and parcel of his process. It's a neat bit of writing. For the last year, Yer's henchmen have kidnapped hundreds of victims who were locked up and starved until they were weak enough to be transformed. The zombies are kept underground in semi-darkness, locked up inside huge cellars. Some are occasionally allowed out to roam around the castle for Yer's amusement. He enjoys watching them going berserk with rage, baying for blood. Boris is certain that one day Gingrich Yer will inject himself with the contaminated blood to lead his army of zombies against the world. Not surprisingly, we would like to be out of here before that day comes, Boris says with a frown. We've earned decent money, but we are not allowed to leave, so it's all been a bit pointless really. Gregor and I are hoping to bribe one of the scientists to get us out of this hellhole as soon as possible. It will be Armageddon Day when Yer unleashes his zombies on the world. But perhaps you can stop him. It's a monumental task, but not impossible. You will have to kill his zombies, each and every one of them. You're going to kill them all. If you don't kill them all, we are doomed, and so are you. Boris's desperate words ring inside your head. What he's told you about Yer seems crazy, but maybe it is true. Could it have been zombies who jostled you in the courtyard when you arrived? Have you ironically found the mythological beast you've spent so long searching for? Or are they about to find you? You smile at Boris and tell him you have nothing to lose, and you will do it or die trying. Both men cheer loudly and give you a big slap on the back in gratitude. So, you do end up with someone giving you a mission. Fighting fantasy gonna fighting fantasy, I guess, but at least it's not some king. It's a down at heel psychopath from an undisclosed country I made up. A few words of advice before you begin your zombie slaying, stranger, Boris says, looking at your wrists. Make sure your open wounds don't get any zombie blood on them, or you will end up becoming infected too. The zombie virus is highly contagious. If you want to ask Boris if there's anything else in the storeroom which could be of use, you can. Or would you rather thank him for the advice, say goodbye, and walk immediately over to the door in the far wall? I think we'll ask him if he's got any more stuff that could help. I do sort of want a weapon that's better than this tiny little penknife I've got. I imagine he'll make me pay for them. We haven't got much in stock at the moment, but you are welcome to what we have. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to charge you. If there's any stock missing and Yer finds out, we will be turned into zombies immediately. Boris looks at his clipboard and reads out what he has for sale, saying, Everything here costs $1. We've got rubber gloves, AAA batteries, hacksaws, screwdrivers, pencils, steel pulleys, magnifying glasses, magnets, string, fish hooks, sunglasses, knife sharpeners, glue, packing tape, and scissors. A bit of a mixed bag, but there we are. What would you like to buy? So $1 for everything. I mean, it's a shopping trip as well. Fighting fantasy, gonna fighting fantasy real hard, even when it's not remotely thematically appropriate, it turns out. This is such a Ian Livingstone list of things, isn't it? Which of these random items are gonna be useful? You can make a case for a lot of them. Yeah, rubber gloves seem like a great thing to have if you're trying to avoid being infected with zombie cooties. A hacksaw could be handy. So I've got rubber gloves, hacksaw. I've got pencils. I've already got like a marker, so that seems fine. Glue seems useful, and magnifying glasses seem useful, and screwdrivers seem useful. Do I want the batteries instead of the magnifying glass? Maybe I do. Okay, we'll go rubber gloves, batteries, hacksaw, screwdriver, glue. And that uses up all my remaining money. But I don't think there's going to be loads and loads of options for spending money in this book, so that's probably a perfectly sensible decision. You can ask him if he's got any provisions as well. I've got lots of stamina. I think we'll go with what I've gone for and head for the door in the wall. The door opens into another white-walled corridor illuminated by bright strip lights. You see the words, "Help me," written in dried blood on the left-hand wall. You don't stop to think about it and carry on until you arrive at a T-junction, where the corridor branches left and right as far as you can see. Do you want to go left, or would you rather go right? I think on this occasion we will do the traditional going left. The corridor ends at a solid-looking white-panelled door. You press your ear to it but hear nothing. Do you want to open the door, or would you rather turn around and walk along the corridor in the opposite direction? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Let us open the door. Listening at doors, it's like Warlock of Firetop Mountain all over again. The door opens into a small laundry room. There is a tall, white cupboard in one corner, in front of which lies a bucket on its side, a mop and 2 brooms. A plastic basket piled high with washings sits on top of a work surface, which runs from one corner of the far wall over to the cupboard. Underneath it you see a washing machine and a tumble dryer. There is an old black kit bag propped up against the wall by the door next to a row of shoes. Do you want to open the kit bag, or would you rather open the cupboard? I feel like the cupboard's going to have cleaning supplies in it, most likely, so the kit bag seems like a more useful place to start looking. Hopefully I can have a look in the cupboard as well, but you never know, so I think the kit bag is the way to go. You unzip the bag and find some musty old sports clothes. A pair of grey sweatpants, a t-shirt and a pair of trainers. Everything seems to be in your size if you want them. I do indeed. But the most exciting thing you find in the bag is a baseball bat, 1d6, which could serve as a very useful weapon. Suddenly, you hear a scratching sound coming from inside the cupboard. So, classic zombie-killing weapon, the baseball bat. I don't think in reality baseball bats are actually sturdy enough to do the kind of damage you want to do to a zombie. Don't get me wrong, I think you could do someone a real mischief with a baseball bat, and people have certainly been done a real mischief with baseball bats, but they aren't like the sturdiest of weapons. Give me a nice claw hammer. That's my preferred zombie killing weapon. I may have thought about this a fair amount. Yeah, I feel like a claw hammer is a good bit of kit. It's like small, portable, not too heavy, so remember, you're going to be killing potentially quite a few zombies in a row, so you don't want something that's really, really hard to lift. The claw hammer deals an awful lot of force into a small area, good for cracking the skull and destroying the brain, which, as we all know, is the key way to take out a zombie. So, yeah, it's the thinking man's melee weapon when it comes to zombies. Anyway, there's a scratching sound coming from inside the cupboard. Without warning, the double doors of the cupboard burst open. Two half-dead human-like beings in ripped clothing leap out and try and grab you with their bleeding, blistered hands. One has broken fingers sticking out at strange angles. Their skin is grey and pallid, covered with open wounds and festering sores. They have thin, greasy hair, and their gaping mouths reveal broken, blackened teeth. Their sunken, bloodshot eyes ooze yellow gunk. A horrible gurgling sound erupts from their throats as they close in on you. They are zombies. You must fight them barehanded or with a weapon if you have one. I do have a weapon. My weapon deals 1d6 damage, so anything but a 1 is going to be good here. 4. Excellent. I smash both the zombies. There is a picture of the zombies exploding out of the cupboard. It's another really, really cracking bit of work, I have to say. Diving straight for the viewpoint character. There's some mops and things on the floor which give tremendous sense of perspective and how violently they're lunging towards you. There's some action lines as well. It's just a really, really good bit of work. Really dynamic. Again, quite comic booky, which I think is entirely suitable. But yes, I have defeated the zombies. Well, I need to note down that I have killed 2 zombies. Dispatching the 2 slow zombies was easy enough, but you know that unless you find yourself a gun, you will have no chance against a horde of them. You step over their bodies to look in the cupboard. Inside you find a small metal box with a green cross printed on the lid. It is a medkit, which will add 4 points to your stamina when you decide to use it. Like I say, I don't think there's any issue with your stamina going above its starting value, so you should just use it immediately, I guess. I mean, it makes intuitive sense within the context of the gamebook because you are not fully healthy at the start of the game. You are weak from being kept in a prison cell for 6 or 7 days on very little food. So I think it's probably a deliberate thing. So yeah, I will use the medkit to improve my stamina to 35. I mean, that's a really interesting way of doing stamina, actually. Being able to improve your stamina above the starting value again gives you a sense of progression if you're able to go above what you originally started with. It feels like levelling up in a very subtle way. So it's a really, really simple decision, but it actually has some interesting ramifications in terms of how the gamebook plays. Something to talk about at the end when I sort of get more of a feel for how it pans out over the course of the whole book. But yeah, this so far is a masterclass in really, really sort of parsimonious game design that just works. And it's a big call to do systems that are more simple than the classic fighting fantasy system as well, but it just opens something up. There's also 2 cardboard boxes of bullets which you put into your bag together with the medkit. I mean, I've used the medkit. At least you now have ammunition, if not a gun. So I better note that I've got some ammo. There is no other way out of the room, so you go back the way you came. You notice a small door no more than a metre high in the right-hand wall of the corridor. A simple latch keeps it closed. Do you want to open it, or would you rather keep walking along the corridor? One of my less favourite things, the long corridor with doors hanging off it that you can decide whether or not you want to go in. And you always have to decide to go into them because you need to explore. Ian Livingstone does like a corridor, bless him. The door opens into a small, musty-smelling cubbyhole which is used for storage. It is disgustingly filthy inside, with rats' droppings covering the floor and cobwebs hanging down in the corners. There are 2 large plastic storage boxes tucked away at the back. The first is full of old newspapers and magazines. The second contains old books, a wallet with $2 inside, and a small cardboard box full of bullets. You put the items you want in your bag before closing the cubbyhole door to carry on walking along the corridor. So, more bullets, yay, and $2, yay. You pass a dirty old mattress that is propped up against the right-hand wall. It appears to have been dumped in the corridor long ago. Broken springs stick out through its torn, grubby cover. Do you want to look behind it, or would you rather keep on walking? Again, we must always look behind things. There is a narrow passageway behind the mattress. So narrow it would require you to walk sideways to go down. You peer down it, but it is too dark to see very far. Do you want to squeeze yourself along it, or would you rather keep on walking? Oh, this is a proper decision, this is. I'm not especially claustrophobic, but I think I'd be considerably more claustrophobic if I were to find myself in a castle full of blood-crazed zombies. So, it's a lovely, tempting thing to go and explore, but at the same time I can picture myself being set upon by zombies. And that's a nice decision again, in the sense that what it's doing is offering you a dangerous scenario where you can very easily, in the context of the game book, foresee a way in which it could go horribly wrong. And that is good writing. I think in a game book, you want the player to be able to bring some kind of knowledge about the game world into the decisions they make. And this is a really good example of doing that. I mean, obviously we're going to get squeezed down the corridor. What's the worst that can happen? As you inch your way slowly down the narrow passageway, you see a chink of light in the distance. You also notice a very bad smell in the air, something akin to rotten eggs. You keep going quietly as possible. At last you come to the end of the passageway and see that it leads into what looks like an old workshop. There is a disused fireplace set in the left-hand wall, with an anvil in front of it. A long workbench is set against the right-hand wall, with a vice fixed to it, and old broken tools lying on top of it. A tatty, orange, plastic curtain stretches across the wall opposite. As you step into the room, the curtains are suddenly pulled apart by snarling, half-dead humans in ripped clothes who rush at you, trying to slash you with long, broken nails of their outstretched hands. Their skin is grey and blighted with open wounds and festering sores. They have long, dishevelled hair with teeth missing from their blackened mouths. Swollen tongues fill their open mouths, and their vacant eyes are milky white, red-rimmed and sunken in their sockets. We're going to get a lot of this kind of thing, I think, over the course of the adventure. I'll be very curious to see whether the description settles down, because he's at some point going to run out of ways to describe zombies in quite this degree of detail. They screech and gurgle in anticipation as they rush towards you. They are zombies. 8 of them in total. You must fight them bare-handed or with a weapon if you have one. So this is a trickier fight. We are going to take some damage here because we only have 1d6 worth of fighting ability. So, first round, I take out 3. That leaves 5. So I lose 5 stamina points. That's quite brutal. And hopefully I've got 1 in 3 of taking them out in the second round, which is what I was hoping to do. I roll a 2. So there's 3 of them left. They deal 3 stamina points, down to 27. That zombie damage can really add up quickly. But in the third round I am able to deal 4 damage and deal with the rest of the horde with my trusty baseball bat. So, there's a sense that it can go wrong very quickly. This is, I think, quite a swingy, potentially, combat system. How much damage did I take? I took 7 points of damage over the course of that combat. I'm looking to do 3.5 damage per round with my baseball bat. So 3 rounds is pretty much bang on, actually, which means 2 rounds of damage, 1 doing 4.5, 1 doing 1. So, yeah, I did slightly worse than average, I think, on that. It should have been about somewhere around 5.5 points of damage would have been standard for that. So, yeah, it's not actually hugely worse than the average. I do wonder whether Ian Livingstone crunched any numbers for this, or whether he did it just on vibes. Again, we'll find out as the adventure progresses. You step over the twitching bodies of the zombies and take a good look around the room. The only thing of interest you find is a pair of blacksmith tongs, which you put in your bag. There is an alcove behind the curtain where you find a black iron door that was previously hidden. If nothing else, if I get out of this alive, I'm definitely going to have a bunch of souvenirs. I think there's going to be so many items in this overall, and I bet only about half of them have any kind of actual utility in the story. Do you want to open the door? Yes, I do. The door is locked, and it is far too sturdy to break open. You could try a key in the lock if you have one. If you do have a key, turn to the number which is stamped on it, where we have key number 9. So I'm assuming this must be surely the only key, because you can't have got a different key at any point. And is it going to be able to disambiguate in the text if you end up with multiple keys later? I feel as though this must be the only key. Otherwise, there's every possibility of ending up at completely the wrong section. Much to your satisfaction, the key turns in the lock. The heavy door creaks open, leading into an old coal store. There is a shovel on top of the pile of coal, but nothing else of interest. There is a black iron door in the far wall and a key hanging on a hook nearby. If you want to search through the pile of coal with a shovel, you can, or would you rather try to open the door with the key hanging on the hook? Let us have a rummage in the coal. It's a classic hiding place, to be fair. It is dirty work, and you are soon covered in coal dust. I mean, the least of my problems, surely. You are just about to give up digging when the shovel hits something solid. You clear away the coal to discover an old plastic sack tied with nylon twine. You untie the sack and find a grappling hook attached to a good length of climbing rope. You fasten it to your bag, thinking that it might be needed later, and go over to the door to try and open it with the key hanging by the hook. Grappling hook. Classic adventuring bit of kit. Real sense that Ian Livingstone is still channeling a very standard fighting fantasy book on some levels, and that is in its own way charming. I think particularly for the 30th anniversary of fighting fantasy, there is actually something to be said for including some of those classic adventure game book tropes, even in a book that is otherwise set in a modern milieu. The key unlocks the door, which opens into a boiler room housing 4 large rumbling boilers with outlet valves hissing steam. Gurgling hot water pipes lead up from the boilers, disappearing into the low ceiling. You had a lot of gurgling in this adventure game book. It's a gurgly old time. There is a large metal air vent in the ceiling, yet it is still very hot inside the room. At the far end of the room there is another iron door and a key hanging on a hook next to it. Do you want to search the boiler room, or would you rather try to open the door on the far wall with the key? I feel as though we've got something good out of the last room, so logically speaking, according to the rules of fighting fantasy, this room has just got a trap in it. But I do need to keep exploring my environment, so I am going to search the boiler room even though it is really hot. There is a small, red-painted cupboard fixed on the left-hand wall that you hadn't noticed earlier, as it was hidden from view by one of the boilers. On opening it, you find some bandages and antiseptic cream that you use to bind your wounded wrists, since they are still in a bad shape from the shackles. Add 2 stamina points. Thank you very much. Stamina now 29. So back to where I was at the start. Suddenly you hear a noise overhead. Sliding down the air vent are 3 zombies who land on the floor in a crumpled heap. They stand up awkwardly and step forward to attack. You must fight them barehanded or with a weapon if you have one. So, there's a picture of the zombies. It's pretty good. Again, comic book vibe, I think even more so this time. The zombie lady in the front looks as though she would not be at all out of place in Mega City 1, the world of 2000 AD, and the 2 behind her, a bit less detailed, but yeah, nice. And I do like the way the pipes have been used to create a sort of sense of enclosure in the room. Backgrounds in this have been really nicely judged. They don't distract from the main action, but they do add to it, and they do give each picture of zombies, which is basically all that he's getting to depict, a sense of unique place, which I think is good. Oh, I need to write down that I'd killed 8 zombies in previous room, so I've killed 10 zombies altogether. I now need to kill another 3. Can I do it in 1 round? Yes, I can. I roll a 6, so that's another 3 zombies taken out, taking my total zombies killed to 13. You continue your search of the boiler room and find a crowbar propped against some piping. The crowbar does 1d6 damage. Crowbar, in some ways, a better weapon than a baseball bat, certainly more resilient, but as I said earlier, it's also a bit heavier. You're going to get quite tired quite quickly, I think, wielding a crowbar as a weapon. But yeah, it still feels like a faint upgrade from the baseball bat. I think the crowbar should be 1d6 plus 1. I think it should be better than the baseball bat, but that's just me. There is nothing else in the room of much use, so you decide to try and open the door in the far wall with the key hanging on the hook. The key turns in the lock and you find yourself back in a main corridor running left to right. You lock the door behind you and think about which way to go. The decision is soon made for you. There is somebody coming along the right-hand corridor. Coming down the corridor towards you with ungainly lumbering strides are 4 zombies. They have pallid skin, grey, covered with gaping wounds and festering sores. Is that the 3rd or the 4th festering sores? Their hair hangs down in greasy clumps. They have cracked lips and bleeding tongues that stick out of their open mouths. Their sunken, glazed-over eyes are bloodshot and red-rimmed, but they get very animated when they see you, making screeching and gurgling sounds as they try to walk faster. Screeching and gurgling, for fans of screeching and gurgling. We are getting a certain amount of repetition in the description of the zombies. I think that's fine. Honestly, you're not sure how many zombies the player's going to come across. You can kind of not skip over it, but skim read the description of the zombies if it starts getting really repetitive. That's fine. Yeah, it's just the nature of the beast, I think. If you're going to have zombies, you are going to end up describing them a lot. And that is very much what we get here. Maybe it might have been nice to have some more description of what the zombies are wearing, who they seem to have been. One of the things I love about the Romero zombie movies is that you get a real sense of who the zombies once were. I think it's in Day of the Dead. There's a zombie with oven gloves, which is just one of my favourite things ever. Just this middle-aged lady with oven gloves who's now a zombie. And that's something that particularly Zack Snyder's fair to middling remake of Day of the Dead just didn't really get right. The zombies there are very anonymous looking. There's no thought really been put into them other than we need them to look kind of similar so that we can do like big zombie hordes and that. Anyway, that's a conversation for, to be honest, a different podcast. But yeah, we are getting a lot of zombie descriptions and we have to fight 4 zombies now. Let's see if I can do these in one go. We roll a 1. That's not good. So I take 3 points of damage. Now down to stamina 26. Let's try again. 3 remaining zombies. And this time I roll a 6 and finish them off. I've now killed 17 zombies. You notice that one of the zombies is clutching a pistol. 1d6 plus 2 damage, holding it by the barrel. You prise it out of the undead monstrosity's fat fingers and discover that the clip has no bullets, although the pistol does appear to be in full working order. If you have bullets in your backpack, you will be able to fire the gun. I'm not wearing a backpack. It's more of a shoulder bag. But yeah, pistol, 1d6 plus 2. And we do have bullets, so that's good news. That should increase our ability to murder zombies quite nicely. Nice that we're not tracking ammo as well, I think. That would add something to the game. I mean, it would give it that real survival horror Resident Evil vibe. But ultimately, I think in the constraints of a game book, it's better to just say you've got enough ammo. And I feel like that might be a good note to finish the recording on, having found a gun. we've got some clothes, got some shoes. We are all set for zombie murdering action. I think that is a good place to call it a halt. I've been recording for a little while, so I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it on multiple levels. It feels quite nicely designed, but it also feels very Ian Livingstone, and I'm enough of a nostalgic about early game books from fighting fantasy that I'm just enjoying the Ian Livingstone elements of it as well. It just feels like coming home, you know, and having those familiar elements redone in a modern setting with a really slick new set of systems. It is that nice balance of this is something warm and comforting and familiar to me, and at the same time this is fresh and interesting, and I'm intrigued to see where it goes. So I shall go away, I shall play it on my own time. I will be back for you in just a few moments with some closing remarks. Tatty bye. I have finished Blood of the Zombies. Sort of. After the recorded playthrough, I got a decent way further into the book and then wound up being torn apart by zombies. I realised that doesn't narrow it down very much, but that is the nature of this gamebook. I was sufficiently far along that I actually invoked the sausage-fingered bookmark rule again. It rapidly became obvious that being eaten by zombies is how almost every attempt to beat this gamebook is going to end. After I got eaten again, I made the decision that I was just going to continue the playthrough and just cheat my way through the fights, because it was clear I wasn't going to be able to hack, slash and bomb my way through the book honestly. That is not my normal approach, but I think I'd subconsciously already figured out the broad outlines of how the book worked and realised that this was a highly linear affair, which would be something of a chore to repeatedly replay. A high degree of familiarity with Ian Livingstone's work probably informed the decision. I doubt I'd have made the same choice if this was a book by a different author, but some of Livingstone's worst impulses were clearly on display with this one, and I don't regret the decision at all. I basically decided to continue playing until I hit an actual roadblock based on something I hadn't found. My suspicions were that the book was so linear that I'd probably be able to get a long way before I wound up stuck. In fact, I only hit 2 roadblocks. The first was a classic bit of Ian Livingstone in that there's one item on the list of things that Boris will sell you in the stockroom that's required to progress, which I didn't buy. It wasn't a big deal, and once I'd checked that I had indeed remembered where the item could be found, I didn't feel any need to go back to the start and play through the whole book again just to make the same decisions I'd already made, except for that one. Again, I think knowing how an Ian Livingstone book often works definitely informed my decision. I'd already been exploring pretty thoroughly and had a big list of stuff, and it was quite close to the final showdown, so I just carried on again. The second roadblock was more fundamental, in that in order to truly beat this book, you will have to kill every zombie in the castle. Every last one. At the end, it'll ask you how many zombies you've killed and tell you to turn to that paragraph number. I was off by 1. I could tell I was off by 1 because I could see the right paragraph sitting there right next to the one I'd just turned to. Now, there were 2 possibilities. One was that I'd made some small clerical error along the way and had actually killed the right number of zombies. Human error is always a possibility, especially where I'm concerned, and there are a sufficient number of zombie fights in this book that it is easy to forget to add a lone zombie to the list or to simply make a small error when adding zombies to the total. The other possibility was that I'd got the addition right, but somewhere along the way I'd missed a single zombie hiding in a cupboard or something. That would require me to go back and meticulously search through the book with a fine-tooth comb in search of the elusive cadaver. The thought of going back when I was confident I'd seen upwards of 90% of the gamebook already simply wasn't very appealing. So I didn't. I'd already beaten the zombie master and almost all of his zombie horde, or possibly even all of his zombie horde. I had no idea where a solitary zombie might be hiding, so I just called it a day there. I'd found all of the various key items and the necessary clues. I'd jumped through all of the hoops the gamebook put in front of me, albeit not strictly honestly, and in terms of the actual content the gamebook has to offer, I was more than satisfied that I'd seen it. I was more than half convinced that the missing zombie was human error on my part anyway, and it would have been extremely galling to go back and play through only to find that was indeed the case. It might sound like I didn't much care for Blood of the Zombies, and in some ways I really didn't, but in other ways I had a nice time playing it. As well as some significant issues, which I'll go into more detail on, there's plenty of fun stuff in here as well. I think it is more or less unplayable as written. I certainly wouldn't recommend it to newcomers to the series, but if you know how these books typically work and you're an experienced hand, you can salvage a pretty good time from this mess. And I basically had that nice time with Blood of the Zombies because I know how and when to cheat. I know that combat in fighting fantasy is often wildly unbalanced, and therefore I'm very comfortable just ignoring it if it seems to be getting in the way. I know to do the same thing if there's lots of random dice rolls that lead to instant death, which, to be fair, there are here as well. I know there's not a lot of mileage in replaying an extremely linear book in its entirety if I've got a pretty good idea what I missed when I got stuck. It's almost like being a programmer in an extremely basic way. Knowing how this sort of gamebook works means that I can ignore or fudge everything that's going to annoy me, and that allows me to actually focus on the good parts. And I'm reminded of one of my favourite video games growing up, Shadow of the Beast 2 on the Commodore Amiga. It's a side-scrolling action-adventure game with light role-playing elements, which is notable for two things. It is absolutely beautiful, and it's hard to the point of being barely playable. As a kid, I struggled to get anywhere into the game at all. I would die almost immediately every time, but thankfully there was a cheat which made you immune to damage and turned the game from a brutally difficult action game into something more akin to stylised adventuring with light puzzle elements. Cheating actually made the game more fun, not less fun for me, because what I really wanted to do, though I might have struggled to articulate this at the time, was simply enjoy the beautiful and weird environments, the gorgeously designed sprites, and the stellar soundtrack. I didn't really want to play it as a game in the way it was designed, and I feel similarly about Blood of the Zombies. Let's talk about some good elements. Firstly, the writing is always strong with Ian Livingstone, and Blood of the Zombies is no different. Despite the fact that the main enemy you'll be facing is hordes of zombies, he finds a few neat ways to make them stand out. There's a zombie playing a drum kit in one of the rooms, which I love, an ape-like super zombie, and a couple of occasions where zombies have access to explosives, which is tremendously appealing. There aren't very many NPCs, and they aren't especially interesting, but what you do get to see is several of them coming back as The Walking Dead, which is an absolutely classic bit of zombie movie nonsense. That ties into something else which I found appealing about the book. There is a subdued feeling of being in a video game as well as being in a game book. I feel like Resident Evil looms large over Blood of the Zombies, and I don't see that as a bad thing at all. Ian Livingstone has obviously been very successful in the video game space, with Eidos being responsible for the wildly successful Tomb Raider franchise before their merger with Square Enix. The feeling of exploring a zombie-infested house, trying to find weapons and tools to progress further, is nicely realised. The final zombie-slaying set-piece feels like it could have come straight out of a video game, as you gun down a seemingly endless horde of the shambling dead with a belt-fed Browning heavy machine gun. Tracking the number of zombies you kill is also quite satisfying in the same kind of way. A number goes up and gradually gets comically large. That is a core video game experience, and it provides a reliable little hit of dopamine. The same video game vibe is present as you pick up the various different weapons on your travels through the house, starting with a measly penknife and graduating to various better quality melee weapons before acquiring a pistol, shotgun, submachine gun, and even the classic zombie dicing chainsaw gives a tremendous sense of progression. You get grenades as well, which add an interesting layer of tactics. You have a very limited supply, and while you can always choose to use them in combat, there's a few places where grenades can be used to effectively get an extra round of attacks in, provided you've managed to save one for the occasion. If the combat rules were more functional, this would have added some really nice moments of tension as you weigh up whether or not to spend a grenade, knowing that you might be able to get more out of it later if the encounter is set up in that way. I did wonder earlier whether Livingstone had made an attempt to balance the combat, or whether it was all vibes. It was definitely all vibes. Anyone who has beaten this book fairly should probably consider buying a lottery ticket, because you might just be the luckiest human being alive. I saw one analysis claiming that it's actually not possible to beat the book honestly. I don't generally look up what other people are saying before I've beaten a book and decided how I feel about it, because I don't want to be spoiled and I don't want my initial impressions to be contaminated by other people's opinions, even if I later find I agree with them. For later books in the series, I did get into the habit of checking the Fighting Fantasy wiki to see if there were any game-breaking errors I needed to be aware of, but that's basically as far as I go. In the case of Blood of the Zombies, I really wish I'd known that the combat was potentially so broken that you don't have enough stamina to win, even if you roll 6s in every attack round and use the grenades at the most judicious times. It would have been fun to see if that analysis was right as I played, but I don't feel like I want to go back and try again, mostly because I've got very little reason to doubt that they are completely right. I got eaten about 2/3 of the way through, and I'd been rolling pretty well and found all of the good weapons, and the fights only get harder from there on in. And this feels like an area where it might be the case that LLMs could be useful in gamebook design. Being able to run play simulations to get an idea of how well the book is balanced for combat and indeed other elements feels like a good candidate for the technology. Though, honestly, I feel in the case of Blood of the Zombies, probably 5 minutes with a pencil and a calculator would have been enough to work out average stamina loss from the various battles. Given that you have to do all of them to win, and there's quite a lot, it shouldn't have been beyond the realms of possibility to spot that the zombies are going to eat you 10 times out of 10, even with the maximum starting stamina. It's a shame, because I think there is something quite appealing about the core system as it's conceived. It's very clean, upgrading your weapons feels extremely impactful, and it nicely captures the idea that one zombie is no real threat but 20 are an absolute menace. I think the decision to make you kill all the zombies is part of the problem. If the fighting had felt more like a last resort than a default approach, I think the system could have had real legs. It's nicely set up to make fighting zombies feel like a punishment, which is no bad thing in a zombie gamebook. If it was a case of trying to avoid fights for the most part and use quickness and smarts to escape the zombies with the combat system as a backup, I think the system could have worked very nicely indeed. In an absolutely ideal world, you'd have two approaches, zombie dodging or zombie slaughter, to allow you to replay the book in a more satisfying way. There's something fatally cool about knowing you've killed every single zombie, but I think I'd want to make that a super secret ending for really committed players, rather than the only way to win. And you know I'm a fan of that sort of thing, and I think this would have been the perfect book to do two routes, one based on finding the best weapons, and one based on finding and using other items. It's something I did with my gamebook Rats in the Cellar, and I do think that it's a good way to make a gamebook feel less linear, even if the core events are absolutely set in stone. Aside from the massive issues with the combat system, Blood of the Zombies is actually more generous than many of Ian Livingstone's books. It is a typical scavenger hunt, but with it being generally linear, it's not hugely challenging, and most of the items you really need are quite easy to find if you've gone in with the mindset that you are going to be rummaging like an absolute champ. I like how generically useful the crowbar is. There's nothing more irritating than being given something like a crowbar that's clearly going to be handy in a bunch of different situations and then only getting a single chance to use it. There's some gently comic items included. I like the fancy dress outfits that you can technically wear to give everything a whiff of the absurd. There's a fair few fun things like breaking into Gingrich Year's computer or calling him on his private phone extension that also have a slightly tongue-in-cheek vibe that appeal to me. And there's a lovely reference to Fighting Fantasy's 30th birthday, which I definitely appreciated. Blood of the Zombies ends up feeling more like an interactive novel than a game. I did actually really enjoy my playthrough, but there's an element of smoke and mirrors that fell apart as soon as I thought about playing it again. That just seemed like it would be an absolute chore. Now, approach it right, and that first playthrough can be a lot of fun because, fighting aside, the difficulty isn't that high, but that also means that there's no real incentive to go back for more. As I observed in my recorded playthrough, this feels like a mashup between a zombie movie and a fairly traditional dungeon crawl, and that odd quality certainly gives it more charisma than it might otherwise have had. I should also say that the art is superb. With only zombies to work with for the most part, Kevin Crossley does a sterling job of elevating them so that every illustration feels distinctive whilst also cleaving close to the classic zombie look. I also appreciated the chance to play a book set in the present day which had a bit of a science fiction vibe. I totally get why Fighting Fantasy dropped the experimentation and stuck to the core fantasy offerings as time went on, but Blood of the Zombies stepping outside of that comfort zone is a welcome change of pace. So a flawed book, perhaps even a bad book, but one I can't bring myself to actually dislike. It shouldn't be the case that you need a fairly good handle on where to cheat to enjoy a title, but the fact is I did have a good handle on where to cheat, and I felt like I was able to extract the maximum amount of fun from Blood of the Zombies. For everything that's wrong with it, there is still some great stuff in there if you're prepared to do some work that you absolutely shouldn't have to do. Like a lot of interesting but badly flawed game books, I can see how I might go about fixing a lot of the issues to create something that would be really interesting. And I think that always makes me feel better disposed to relatively badly designed game books, because if you're stimulating my own feeling of creativity, getting me to think about design in an interesting way, getting me to think about how I would do things differently, then I'm kind of getting some bonus enjoyment out of it that I wouldn't necessarily get if I was playing a game book and just marvelling at how beautifully designed everything is. So, if you've got a game designer's head on you, then I think Blood of the Zombies makes a really interesting case study, if nothing else. That is all for this episode. I hope you'll join me in a week or so when I'll be playing something I haven't decided yet. I'll be recording from the Doom Industries mobile studio, so it's possibly going to be something quirky I can turn up from the internet. I said earlier that I was hoping my new game book would be out at the same time as this podcast, and it has in fact come out the very same day this episode is dropping. If you check out the pinned comment on the Patreon page, you should find a copy of Mr. Blobby, and the propaganda of the deed has been added to the big list of downloads. If you're having any issues finding it, give me a shout and I'll obviously email you a copy. I hope you enjoy it. If you want to get in touch with me, you can do so by email at hjdoomretrofun, all one word, at gmail.com, or by following me on Blue Sky at hjdoom. Fans of weird pop culture might be interested to know that I've just started a new season of Popular Antiquarian as well. So it is a veritable blizzard of Doom-related content. Fantastic Fights is a production of Doom Industries. Thank you very much for listening. Take care, and I'll see you soon.